in the past. It is a reinvention of the gold standard. And I will try to argue this, but from as far as the rules that concern the way Bitcoin is issued, the way it is circulated, the way it is bought and sold, and the way it is eventually or is not destroyed, it is more similar to the gold standard than to the current fiat money systems with which I was asked to compare Bitcoin. I hope to give you some more elements to understand why I state this, but for those of you who are a bit familiar with monetary history, that will be apparent from the graphs that have been shown and the words that have been spent concerning the supply of Bitcoins. The supply of Bitcoins is exogenous. It does not depend, unlike fiat money, from a central monetary authority. And this quantity grows according to a predetermined path that you saw depicted on one of those graphs. A step backwards, despite the fact that it, in appearance, is a completely new form of money. And in many respects it is. It is, as you all know by now, completely intangible, invisible, tasteless, odorless, which is true mostly and eminently in the case of Bitcoin. And this is, of course, something that differentiates Bitcoin from fiat currencies, from a dollar bill, which is something which is tangible, that you can actually see, you can touch, you can pass from one hand to the other. And yet, and this is certainly a plus for Bitcoin, it does have a degree of certainty which fiat money, usual fiat money, does not have. And this is also implied by what has been said by the speakers before me. When you have a Bitcoin, due to the fact that the supply of Bitcoin is exogenous, you know exactly what proportion that Bitcoin represents with respect to the whole amount of Bitcoins outstanding at that specific moment. You know that. What your share of the global Bitcoin wealth is. Whereas you do not know how much this represents with respect to the monetary supply denominated in US dollars. You can, you can look at the statistics, and retrospectively you can see that if there were a couple of $1,000 billion in circulation, this is, but you don't know that in advance. You don't know that with this degree of certainty, because you are exposed to variations in the money supply by those who create, who issue these US dollars, namely the Federal Reserve banks. Which means you don't know how much your share in the global dollar-denominated wealth is. And this is what makes Bitcoin so attractive. This is one element, at least, and it was mentioned before. The fact that there is no one messing around with this money. No one arbitrarily changing the amount of money in circulation. No one deciding from one day to the next, as it has occurred increasingly over the past years, that the money supply will increase by a factor of 3 in a matter of a couple of years. In fact, we have to look a bit more closely into this issue of money creation. Because when we are talking about US dollars and in general of the fiat money, we are not just talking about pieces of paper. This is, as you all know, just one form that money takes today. And we are, even before Bitcoin and regardless of Bitcoin, familiar with electronic money in the form of bank deposits. Which means that a large amount, the large majority of money supply today is not handled directly by central banks. But a large part of money supply is created through the banking system. created by banks, by private banks, by commercial banks, through the so-called money multiplier in the form of electronic money, numbers, just like Bitcoin, in ledgers, with the difference that, the appreciable difference, the significant difference, that the numbers that identify dollar monies are held in ledgers at private banks, whereas the numbers that identify your bitcoins are held in that public ledger which was described before, namely the blockchain.